You check your balance before you buy the coffee. A number on a screen decides whether you can have it. That number is the only thing standing between you and almost everything you want. Food, shelter, a ride home. Without it, the transaction simply doesn't happen. It feels like the most natural thing in the world. Obviously, you need something to trade. Obviously, two strangers need a shared unit of value before they'll hand each other anything. But for most of human history, that's not how it worked at all. You've probably heard the story economists tell about money. Before coins, before dollars, there was barter. A farmer with extra grain would trade it directly for a fisherman's catch. Eventually, that got clunky. What if the fisherman didn't want grain that day? So humans invented money to solve the problem. Clean? Logical. It's in half the textbooks. The anthropologist David Graeber went looking for the moment this actually happened. A society running on pure barter before money stepped in to fix it. He never found one. Nobody has. The anthropologist Caroline Humphrey, after reviewing the ethnographic record, put it bluntly. No example of a barter economy, pure and simple, has ever been described, let alone one where money emerged out of it. Not once, not anywhere. So if it wasn't barter, what was your ancestor actually doing when they needed a fish and had nothing but grain? The answer is stranger than a trade and more human than a transaction. They kept track, not with numbers, with memory. In small communities, and for most of your species' existence, every community was small. Everyone knew everyone. People didn't swap goods on the spot. They gave things away, a share of the catch, a cut of the harvest, and they simply remembered who owed what to whom. The sociologist Marcel Mauss studied this pattern across dozens of cultures and found it wasn't random generosity. It came with an invisible set of rules: give, receive, repay. Every gift created a debt, and every debt created a bond, a reason for that relationship to continue into next season and the one after that. Nobody wrote it down. Nobody needed to. The ledger lived inside the community itself, in reputation, in memory, in the simple fact that everyone would still be sitting around the same fire next winter. Before you picture this as vague or improvised, consider what the anthropologist Bronisław Malinowski documented in the islands off Papua New Guinea. Communities there ran something called the Kula Ring, an exchange network stretching across dozens of islands where specific shell ornaments circulated for generations, each one carrying the memory of everyone who had ever given or received it. The objects themselves were almost worthless. Nobody wore them, nobody ate them, nobody used them for anything practical. No one was showing them off to impress the next village over. Their entire value was the relationship they proved existed between two people, going back sometimes decades. That's worth sitting with. An entire economic system spanning hundreds of miles of open ocean built not around what something was worth, but around who had trusted whom, and for how long. Here's the part that should stop you. This wasn't a broken, primitive version of an economy patiently waiting to be upgraded into money. It was arguably safer than money. Marshall Salins, the same anthropologist who studied how little hunter-gatherers actually worked, also mapped out how they exchanged things and found it operated on a sliding scale. Close family, close friends, pure generosity, no expectation of return at all, distant acquaintances, a rough, unspoken balance over time. Strangers, outsiders, people you might never see again. That's the only zone where anything like hard bargaining showed up. Notice what that means. The tighter the relationship, the less anyone counted. Counting was for people you didn't trust. Money, when it finally does show up in the archaeological record, doesn't emerge to grease the wheels between neighbors. It shows up between strangers, between armies and the towns they pass through, between kingdoms that owe each other tribute. Graeber's research points to something almost the opposite of the textbook version. Money wasn't invented to make trade easier. It was invented for situations where trust had already run out, and a debt needed to be settled fast with someone you'd probably never see again. There's one more piece Graeber's research uncovered, and it's the part most people find hardest to believe. Once debt did get written down, in Mesopotamia, thousands of years before coins existed, rulers understood something modern economies have mostly forgotten. Left alone, debt compounds. It grows faster than the people who owe it. So Mesopotamian kings periodically declared what historians call a clean slate. wiping the debt records and letting everyone start over. Why would anyone do that? Because a society doesn't function if half its people are permanently, hopelessly in debt to the other half. The debt was a tool for keeping relationships alive, not a machine meant to run forever, extracting a little more each year until someone breaks. Think about what that required of your ancestors. To live inside a debt and memory economy, you needed something money has since made optional. You needed to actually know the people around you, their history, their reliability, whether the favor they owed you 3 seasons ago was still good. A coin doesn't ask any of that. A coin works exactly the same whether it came from your best friend or a total stranger. That's precisely why it spreads so well between people who don't know each other, and precisely why it was never necessary among people who did. Now, look at your own life. You still live inside a debt economy. You just don't call it that. You return a favor for a coworker. You remember who covered your shift. You feel a small, specific discomfort when someone buys you dinner twice in a row and you haven't bought once. That itch is Mouse's obligation to repay, still fully wired into you thousands of years later, but you also live inside something your ancestors mostly didn't have to. A world where almost every exchange happens with someone whose name you'll never learn. The barista, the delivery app, the company on the other end of a subscription. Money lets all of that run smoothly precisely because it removes the need for memory, trust, or relationship, which is the whole point of money. And also, quietly, the cost of it. Every transaction that used to require knowing someone now requires only having enough, convenient, fast, and strangely lonely in a way that's easy to miss because it works so well you never have to notice what it replaced. Think about how rarely you actually owe anyone anything anymore in the old sense. You don't owe the grocery store a favor. You don't owe the app a debt of gratitude. It's not going to remember you fondly either way. You paid. The relationship, if you can even call it that, ends the instant the transaction clears. No memory required. No obligation carried forward. Nothing connecting you to that person next season or ever. That's not an accident of modern life. It's the entire design, and it means something quietly significant. The number of people you're bonded to through mutual obligation has shrunk to almost nothing, even as the number of people you transact with every single day has exploded. So what did ancient humans do before money existed? They didn't trade. They remembered. Every gift given was a thread connecting two people across time, obligating them to stay in each other's lives long enough to repay it. The economy wasn't separate from the relationship. It was the relationship. You check your balance before you buy the coffee. A number on a screen decides whether you can have it. Your ancestors checked something else, not a number, a person, and whether that person still owed them or they still owed that person mattered a great deal more than any number ever could.